There is a shame in failure in this country which shocks me. We seem to penalize failure and carry it as a burden all one's life. Why?
How did you end up in Oxford?
Interesting story. Up to fourth form, I was a star student without really trying. My father gave me a car. Jamhuri allowed girls in fifth and sixth form, so of course the car was there to impress them, and the results could not have been worse, below an outright fail.
You graduated.
No, I didn't graduate. We didn't graduate.
Walk me through that.
I came down.
You don't graduate from Oxford. So first of all, you don't study at Oxford, you read at Oxford.
You go up.
I'm sorry, what now? John Ngumi helped engineer Kenya's capital markets, built Loita Capital from thin air and thick ambition, and brokered deals worth over R1 trillion. A man with Oxford polish, Nairobi hustle, and a go big or go home mindset. Strong enough to tell Mo Ibrahim he'd hand in his resignation if he couldn't raise R1 billion. No one can talk about investment banking in Kenya today without mentioning John Ngumi. You've lived also through what anyone would call serious financial failure. You've mortgaged your house
5 times.
You've been almost auctioned.
We were incredibly successful, but we were also incredibly extravagant. I'm driving this car. It's still on loan. I haven't paid for it. It's 5 months overdue, and I'm sure they'll take it away any day. Car is a quarter fueled. I haven't paid school fees. My house had just the previous day appeared at auction, and here I am.
All right, this is our last episode of the year. So we're not talking about deals. We're talking about the person, John. I want us to explore the parts of you that people don't get to meet. You know, John, I've known you for, 25 years. You were one of my absolute favoriteest boss. I say that to all my bosses.
I can tell you the exact year.
That we met?
2000.
Yes, when you joined Citibank.
When I rejoined.
I apologize. And in that time, John, you rejoined Citibank, and I've told you this story before, but how you joined Citibank was everybody knew that John Ngumi was in the building. Because one of the first things he did, the first week when you were at Citibank and you were on the second floor, and you got a call, and I think it was from the late John Mishuki or somebody, but you put this booming voice, and you're like, Mheshimiwa, I am so pleased to hear your voice. The whole building
Really?
heard you all the way to the ground floor. We're like, who's that?
No one ever told me that.
Oh yeah, they're like, that's John Ngumi, the man, the legend. So it was, and I've had a great pleasure to know you over that time as my boss, as my friend, and most importantly, as a mentor. And you've been between two worlds. In that time, you've shown me a little bit of you, not only professionally, but on the personal side. And you grew up between Karen and Kaloleni, Karen and Jamhuri, and then Kenya and Oxford. And you like to tell people you read at Oxford. You didn't study at Oxford. So privilege on one side, John, and grit on another. What did living in those two worlds teach you about who you are and who you're not?
I think, first of all, you must remember that most Kenyans of my generation lived that world anyway. Anybody who was born in the mid to late 50s in Nairobi spent time living in what were, in effect, segregated African quarters, which was Eastlands, not the Eastlands you now know, but the Eastlands of trees and greenery and planning and dustbins and milk deliveries and so on. Order. They were planned establishments. So up to that point, there's nothing very odd about me, except the fact that I was an urban child, and people don't understand what a big step change has happened in Kenya. To be born and raised in Nairobi you were a strange creature, because the bulk of the country was born and raised up country.
So your father was working in Nairobi?
My father was working everywhere. My father was in England. My father had an interesting, mysterious career, but yes, we were in Nairobi.
Whereas that's what point where we say jijazie pengo, when you just fill the blanks for ourselves, and you say an interesting and mysterious.
No, it's the little I know of his history is he was a rebellious boy. He was an only boy. B, he went like all rural children. Then he went to primary school in Yoki in Githunguri, and ended up at Mangu. Rumor has it that he was expelled or sent down or had to spend time away from school for taking to school his father's very strong Mau Mau sympathies. He roamed Nairobi and Mombasa, was a guitarist, and I think met my mother, who was then the pious and pure daughter of Kenya's first African station master in Mazeras or in Voi somewhere. And of course, he was a charmer and charmed her off. And his father was detained as a Mau Mau for 8-9 years, whatever. And in fact, it's ironic we're here because when Agwin Scoville came back to Kenya as Kenya's first barrister, African barrister, he decided to give pro bono services to Mau Mau detainees, and my grandfather was his first customer. And that accounts for the fact that I have a lot of time for Caroline, Agwin Scoville, his
daughter.
Yes. So it's all very... Anyway, then on the eve of independence, I know my father went to England for some years, not the usual study, but he just appeared there and then appeared back. And at independence, he was very clearly a coming man, one of the young people around Jomo Kenyatta. And we saw that. We saw the visible change in lifestyle.
So he went to, so whatever took him to the UK and brought him back to the UK, got him into proximity with Jomo Kenyatta.
Oh no, he'd had that before, because Jomo Kenyatta had a job before he was detained. He was headmaster of Githunguri Teachers School, or whatever it was called, which is where he met my grandfather and my father. Okay.
So he comes back, gets, independence is declared 1963. But this time you're what, 7-8 years old?
I've just turned 8.
Going to school where?
Kalani, St. John's Primary School.
In Kalani.
Proper Catholic run school.
But as you said, Eastlands was very well organized.
It was well organized, but Kalani also was next door to Makongeni. And Makongeni was much poorer because Makongeni was railway quarters. Had been built for bachelor African workers, just like the mine houses, the mine quarters in South Africa. Anybody who read The Mine Boy and Peter Abrahams, the stories of that ilk, will recognize the comparison. So there was poverty there. These strict rules about there being bachelor quarters had broken down anyway. So people were bringing up large families, 4, 5, 6, 8, 10 children in those 10 by 10, 10 feet by 10 feet quarters. And Kalani itself also had elements of segregation. So you had the highest quarter, which was FQ. FQ stood for family quarters. And what distinguished FQ from the rest was that it had indoor toilets, indoor baths. All the others had to go to ablutions outside with the contents being emptied late at night. Yeah, but it was orderly. In that respect, it was orderly.
Yeah. So independence rolls round?
Yeah, and like everybody else who was lucky enough to be able to step into the shoes of the departing Brits, he moved. We moved. We moved to Woodley, which was then the equivalent of Upper Hill, in the sense that Woodley was also our senior civil servants, senior public servants place with 1 acre grounds. We were actually opposite Nairobi girls, now Emoy girls.
The beautiful bungalows on
Yes,
one acre.
1 acre. Beautiful,
Yes.
beautiful place. Absolutely fantastic. And soon after that, in 1969, we moved again, this time to Karen.
This is now like the Jeffersons. You keep moving on up. Keep moving on up.
This was to Karen, where we joined a few people who were there already, but then we were joined for many years thereafter in Karen, right?
But you're still going to school in Kaloleni.
I left Kaloleni. My brother was in school up to 60. I was in school up to 68 in Kaloleni. So from Woodley, yes, we were chauffeur driven to school and back. That's true.
And how do the kids see this? Somebody who used to be with them, probably walking to school, is now being chauffeur driven to school. How does that land with your classmates?
Or you mean this light-skinned boy?
This, yes.
I don't know. I'm not sure that children at that time were that discerning of these differences. I do remember that we used to take this 3-tiered lunch pad, which I believe still exists. People going to school. And I, of course, had no time for it because basically it's eating what you're eating anyway at home. So I used to give mine away. My preference was to use my 10 cents daily allowance. 10 cents went a long way.
You know, the people here who don't know what 10 cents even looks like.
10 cents had a hole in the middle, actually.
Yeah.
And I would use that to go with my friends down to Donholm Road, now Jugo Road, to get mangoes, spiced mangoes. The ones that was for me a delicacy. And on many occasions, because people truly were a community, they would invite me to their homes, and for lunch, and I would carry my 3-pack and I give it away. But the normal fare was ugali and sukuma wiki. If there was meat, it would be fish. This was a very Catholic place, but the fish would be cooked and cooked every day, and you dip the ugali into the sauce until Friday, which you could then eat the ugali. But I can't remember thinking they were poor. I would assume that's.
What did they perceive you?
I have no idea. I suppose I was a benefactor. I remember things like, I don't know whether you ever had this pen sets, pencil sets you used to get color, blah, blah, blah. And for whatever reason, I would get one and give it away, and just give it away. I had no real need for it. But it was a good, I enjoyed school.
So from Kaloleni, where did you move to for high school?
I was taken to the then Duke of Gloucester,
also known as?
Now known as Jamhuri. And most of my friends went to Duke of York, now Lenana, or Prince of Wales, now Nairobi School. So, but again, I didn't feel, I'm sure they felt we were odd, but I didn't feel any real difference. It was actually an interesting place to go to. School was majority Asian at that time.
Is it because Jamhuri is close to Parklands?
No, the school initially was called Indian High School.
Duke of Gloucester?
Yes, until it was renamed Duke of Gloucester. It was the government Indian High School.
Do you have any friends from that time?
A few.
Yeah.
They are now industrialists or, living in England. The bulk of the people there were Asian, so one had to know those Asian.
Yeah.
I enjoyed school. We went through Form 6 up to Form 6 with I didn't have any issues. same lifestyle continued, although my father did insist that we learn some hardships. So in the evening, we would take the Kenya bus to Karen. So one would walk down from Jamhuri with friends and go to the central bus station, which is the site of present-day Hilton Hotel, then take the bus from there to Karen.
Oh, Central Bus was there, not where it is
No,
near
it was
the Sikh temple.
No.
And then you take a bus home.
No, sorry, Central Bus was there, but the buses to Karen and others were at Hilton.
And those days were the days when buses were on a schedule.
Total schedule. And inspectors and those minis running ahead of them to see that they were keeping time, and those inspectors coming in to check. And
What minis?
they had inspectors following buses regularly to see that they were keeping time, that they weren't,
This is 60s, 70s.
This
now.
is 70s.
You don't even know a Nairobi like that.
Yep.
How did you end up in Oxford?
Interesting story. Up to fourth form, I was, I noticed I've been a star student without really trying.
You just had to drop that, huh? It was
It
just so easy for
It was
you.
true. But Form 5 and 6, I let the ball slip. I think my father spoilt me. He gave me a car, very nice car, very, very, very new car, which I would regularly park besides the headmaster's jalopy just to rub it in.
What was your father doing by this time to afford this life of luxury?
The first job that's really conscious, like unconscious he was doing, was when he was appointed in 1969 to head Upland's Biscuit Factory. He had then been in KMC. And then in 72, I think he was then returned to KMC as managing commissioner.
This is Kenya Meat Commission.
But by that time, he had also become a director of East African Airways. He was director of Benbros, which was the agent for British Leyland Cars. He was a lot of places. He was also a somewhat mysterious figure because his name was Richard Douglas, and people thought he was white, and he wasn't. He was actually called Richard Podua Douglas. The story about why that name is mysterious goes back to but that's what he was called.
So when he'd write a letter, people think they're receiving a letter from a Mzungu.
Absolutely. Would he write a letter where? Or to official,
official letters.
And all my family used that name except me. For whatever reason, my mother tells me that when I went to St. John's and was asked my name, I said my name is Ngumi. I'm a second son, so it's after her father. And the name stuck. I've never used the Douglas name.
But people know you as John Douglas Ngumi.
They know that, but I've never used it as my official name.
I always thought Douglas was your middle name.
No,
that was a family name.
Yeah,
okay.
So that's what he was doing at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And we'd see him, his regular, he was always out of the country, but when he was home, his regular friends were head of GSU, head of Kenya Police, head of Special Branch, Minister this, and so those are the people we saw at home. And to me, so to me, those are the people I knew as near family.
A lot of privilege. You grew up seeing a lot of privilege.
I didn't see it as privilege. I saw it as normal.
Yes, exactly. But to an outsider, it would have been. So you're able to navigate within these. This was the, I don't want to call them hoi polloi. This was the posh, the high class, the ruling class of the 70s. What we like to call the old Kikuyu money, John.
It was that.
This is how you rolled.
It was that. So we need them all.
Yeah. Oxford.
I was about to say. So the sixth form here, I'm flashing my car around. Jamhuri allowed girls in fifth and sixth form. So of course, The car was there to impress them. And I was doing economics, geography, and math. And I remember we used to walk around with these huge books, on algebra and calculus and trigonometry and what have you. I wasn't really a math guy, but they impressed the girls, so one sort of walked around with them to impress them. Point is that I didn't quite apply myself. So come April 1975, I'm then interning at National Bank of Kenya, at the head office, Government Road, it was called then.
Were you still in school by this time?
No, I'd finished.
In 74?
64, in 74. So I'm interning, and the results come out, and the results could not have been worse, or were only one step below an outright fail. Now, in those days, we had one university of Nairobi, and it had a constituent college, Kenyatta College, now KU, where people went either to train as teachers, in fact, I recall the real thing people wanted to do was to do teacher training. But unfairly, actually, people thought that only the ones who couldn't get into main campus went there. And of course, it was embarrassing. I'll go there because of my father, but B, because my mother was also the very prominent chief caterers at Nairobi University. So I think my father saw that I was reluctant to go there. And one day I come home, I drive back home. I had a car when I was working as an intern.
First of all, it couldn't have gone down very well with your headmaster, that you're rocking up in school with a car better than him.
And my manager at NBK.
And then now you're manager at NBK.
So, I find a priest.
At home?
At home. Irish priest, Paul Crane, a Jesuit. And he and my father had been friends since the 50s in England. And he told me that my father had told him that I was not very happy. My friends were all going to Warwick and Manchester, Leeds, and then the US or Canada or India or wherever it is they were going to. Or Nairobi University itself. And I was going to go where? To KU. So he asked me whether I was willing to retrace my steps. Those were the words he used. And I said yes. So I found myself on a plane to London, September 1975, I remember. I remember it well because it was almost a daze. I got to the plane and I'm wondering, what am I doing on this plane? And then I go to that priest's residence. I still remember the address, 65 Belgrave Square in Mayfair. And
that's a very posh address. The priest was living in Mayfair.
The church had a place in Mayfair.
Oh, there we go.
That's where he was. And he tells me that what I'm going to do for you is that I'm taking you to a college outside Oxford at a place called Headington Hill. And it's basically a college which trains young people who have been working or unionists and whatever in Catholic social ethics. And I later found out that it was a counter to the socialism and communism that was then rife in similar adult education places. He said, look, you'll go there, you'll be aged 20, you'll find people considerably older and from very different backgrounds to you, but stick it out for 2 years. And you'll be studying for a special diploma in social studies. I said, fine. So I ended up there, found people from the then Southern Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe, from Zambia, from the then Southwest Africa, now Namibia, from Botswana, Swaziland, South Africa, Angola, that whole Southern African area. The next youngest was 38. So he was 16 years older than I was. And they ranged in age all the way up to 52 or 3. So it was modeled on an Oxford college, but it wasn't part of Oxford. It was an affiliate of the college. So I stuck it out. I stuck it out for 2 years. It was hard work. Every evening, I remember, come rain, shine, snow, whatever. Every evening I would walk down to town and look at the colleges and say, one day I'll end up here. So 2 years passed. Luckily enough, I didn't have to endure too much. So you hear all these horror stories of people picking strawberries and what have you in the UK in the holidays, or working in bars, wherever it was. I came back home every holiday. I was here every Christmas and spring and summer.
It's important for the people who are in this room to know that you didn't require a visa.
Yes, there was a visa. Yes.
You just boarded a flight and went. Is it because your father was a director at East African Airways that you were able to come every holiday?
Of course. Why have privileges if you're not going to use them?
And I remember you telling me you didn't even know that there was a right side of the plane.
It took me a very long time to know that, yeah. Anyway, I'd come back home. And
no, let's unpack that a little bit, because I remember you told this to us when we were sitting back, when you met somebody. Remember you landed in Heathrow and you found somebody at the luggage carousel and you were shocked because you didn't even know that they'd been on the plane, and it turns out that...
Actually, what happened there was that it wasn't Heathrow, it was here.
Okay.
At the old Embakasi,
yes.
as opposed to JKIA, there was an airport earlier called Embakasi. And what usually would happen is that one would land and then you would go to the VIP lounge. Was a house. You go to the VIP lounge, have coffee, as somebody worked on your passport and luggage, and then the car came and you went home. And I landed, and one of my best friends is also on the runway. So I asked him, where? And he says he's been on this plane. It hadn't struck me, and I was in already 21 or 2. Hadn't struck me that behind the velvet curtain were many people. Anyway,
You're like, oh, you mean you're on the same plane? We thought there was only business class.
Because only one plane on the runway.
Yes.
Which was this plane.
Yes.
It's East African Airways.
Yes.
So I couldn't figure out why. Anyway, come 77, an Oxford college, I'd then done my specialty diploma, and I think the expression is aced it. So an Oxford college called St. Peter's, which was not... Oxford has a table called the Norrington table, which ranks the 45 or 50 colleges every year academically. And St. Peter's always was noticeable by its propping up or nearly propping up the table. This chap, Gavin Williams, he was a white South African communist exile teaching at Oxford. Asked me whether I wanted to go there. I met the master of the college, Sir Alec Cancross, whose brother a year earlier had been exposed as one of the Cambridge 5 spies, which made him almost a privilege to know him. And he would read his books in college. He was in school. So they asked me to see whether I wanted to go there.
Now, where are you bumping into them?
At some function, I forget what. So I did. So that's why I ended up at St. Peter's in 77. And because I'd aced the special diploma, they allowed me to skip the first year. So I went straight.
St. Peter's is one of the constituent colleges of Oxford. So you went straight into...
This is St. Peter's.
Right.
So I went straight into
second year.
Second year, and they gave me rooms upstairs, which was unusual because it was reserved for because they were proper rooms, a room, a study, and a bedroom.
Not many Africans in Oxford at the time.
Very few. In my college in St. Peter's, there was none. There was one British West Indian, and me.
How was that?
I felt right at home. Why would you feel it different?
You're the only African.
I didn't feel that.
Okay.
No. I felt I was exactly on the same social scale as all these children of aristocrats and what have you. And we became fine friends with them. We downed many champagnes and many.
And is that attributable, John, then to, again, the way you were brought up? So
Perhaps.
you're quite comfortable navigating in this space.
Perhaps, yeah. Perhaps, yeah.
So
I had no issue.
all right. So you read at Oxford.
I read PPE, yeah.
PPE stands for?
Philosophy, politics, and economics.
Is that something that a lot of people do?
It is something that a lot of people who go on to be prime ministers do, yes.
Was that your aim, to be a prime minister?
Yeah.
Did you know what you wanted to do at the time, actually?
Nope. But it was pretty similar to what I'd done in A-levels, so it's fine.
You graduated.
No, I didn't graduate. We didn't graduate. I came down.
I stand corrected. Walk me through that. You don't graduate from Oxford. So first of all, you don't study at Oxford. You read at Oxford.
You go up.
I'm sorry, what now?
You go up and then you come down.
What does that mean, John? What do you mean you go up and then you come
You
down?
go to Oxford, you go up to Oxford, and then you come down.
What does coming down mean?
It means you leave. You graduate.
Okay, this is Oxfordian.
Yeah. So I came down in 79.
Okay.
And yes, I did rather well.
You redeemed yourself, your academic
Yes.
record.
Yeah, I did myself. And
by this time, though, you're 2 years behind your peers because you're taking the diploma.
A year. Because I should have gone to university in 75. I went in 77, but I skipped a year, so I was a year behind. So people like my friend John Kariuki and others were now a year ahead of me.
Yes. You came back to Nairobi?
No. As I was messing about college, messing about after that magnificent ceremony, university ceremony, gown, whatever, which was great. And by the way, as I keep telling people, for us, because we wore a gown every day for dinner, for those who were going to lectures, we wore a tie every day for dinner and a coat, so it wasn't. And then, for example, you wore what we called a sub-fask, which is a dark suit, a white shirt, a white bow tie, a motorboard.
What's a motorboard?
What you do in your head.
You wear that daily?
No, for exams.
Yeah. Just the Oxfordian tradition. By the way, how old is Oxford?
I think the earliest college is now more than 1,000 years.
Wow. And St. Peter's College, the one that you went to?
That was an early 20th century one. Yeah. It was one of the newer ones at the time. There are others which have come up now, but it was one.
And so they wear gowns like, for those, maybe for the people in the room, like what, Harry Potter?
Yeah.
Yes? Yeah. So that everyone's wearing like a Harry Potter gown?
Yeah, you see people going to lectures all day, running around, going to college with days, or stepping into a shop, buy something, and because they're coming from a lecture or a tutorial. I never did lectures. I hated them, but I had no problem with my weekly tutorial. So at a weekly tutorial, that's all the education I was required to do. An hour a week with my tutor in whatever, whether it's economics or politics or development or whatever.
You didn't go to class? I
hated it. I didn't go to class. So I educated myself. In fact, it gave you time to do other things. I remember one time my sister, who was then at a school in Switzerland, calling me and telling me she had been hosting a West Indian band, a steel band, and they were all bloody drunk all the time. I think they were high on drugs anyway. And she asked me if I could host them in England. Hosting means paying for all the expenses for a week, which I agreed to. So because I had a whole week.
You're a student.
And?
How are you paying for the whole band?
Right,
John?
anyway, they came. And we spent time. They were, yeah. If I'd ever had any inclination to take to drugs, that week I spent with them up and down England was a massive disincentive to do so. They were wild. So you asked what I did. I was sitting around in college. Then my father calls me. He'd come for my coming down my graduation. Then he had taken off to do his own things in London. And then he called me and told me he would to take the next train to London, be here tomorrow at 11 a.m. There's somebody I want you to meet. I said, fine. So I went up to his hotel, the Churchill, in Mayfair. I still stay there, so do my family. And I met him talking to somebody called, what's the name of this founder of Ekashui? Mm-hmm. He had a brother who was a banker, but before then he was under secretary at the Ministry of Finance here. And Kenya had just signed, I'm not telling you how I got into banking. Kenya had just signed its first ever syndicated loan with NatWest, National Westminster Bank, as the lead manager that was $100 million, 1979. And they had offered to train a Kenyan for whatever reason. They didn't have anybody in mind. In the way these things work, my father knew Shui, so I was asked to come. Do you want a job? And the answer was yes, I want a job. Good. Come back in January. And that's how I ended up in banking.
NatWest in the UK?
Yeah, in London.
How long did you work there for?
3 years. I trained there.
Before we come back to 3 years in the UK working, when we had our pre-meet, you said your parents were a loud and intimidating force. So what's the role of your parents now in forming the young man that John has become up until this point? Are they for the path that you have taken? Are you partners? Are they feeling you're maybe going left when you should be going right?
I don't know. We never got any feeling at home that our parents were guiding us in any direction. Mm. We sort of were given the world to roam about. So my sister went to school in Boston, then went up to Switzerland. My brother went to become an airline. My younger brother went to Australia, did marine engineering, and ended up being an officer on an Australian ship plying the seas. We're just allowed to go whatever we want to do. There was no real, you'll be a doctor, or you'll be a this, or you'll be that. No, no.
So you come back to Kenya after 3 years.
I came back to Kenya. My work permit was for 3 years, and I wasn't really keen on renewing it because the training, there was no real career path under that training. I could have stayed there, but again, you look and feel, do I really want to stay in England? I'll rise to the very top, but it'll be boring. I might as well can't come back to Kenya. So I wrote.
Race was not an issue at the time?
Race was never an issue for me. I suppose I stick to the right side of London or something, but no, I've not really.
Is it that you don't see it, or your sheer force of character, John, means that people will just see you and they have to see you, they have to talk to you?
You said it, I haven't.
Yeah, because you navigate and again you're not. What's the word? You're not. There's a word I'm looking for. Overwhelmed or really. Make yourself small or shrink yourself because you feel that you've come from Africa and
absolutely not. In fact, in college that was an advantage because we were very few, and therefore one felt that the English felt they needed to like this guy because one day I may end up in Africa or something. I had a very easy, very nice social life in England, and. So I wrote to Joe and Joey, who was related to us by marriage, and he was then chairman of a Greenleaf Bank in Kenya. I wrote to him and said, I'm coming back to Kenya, I need a job. So I went to see the then chief executive, and that's how I got a job at Grindlays Bank. That's where I restarted my career in Kenya.
Grindlays Bank was a multinational, but was it a British-owned bank at the time?
It was a British, actually Scottish-owned bank. It was the entity that begat KCB. When KCB was created in 1970, it was created by the Kenyan government acquiring all but 2 branches of National and Grindlays, and also acquiring 60% of the equity. That's how KCB was created. So the Grindlays was a remnant of that exercise. It had once been the largest bank in Kenya. And it had 2 offices. It had 2 offices. One where West Stanbic is today on Kenyatta Avenue, and the other at Treasury Square in Mombasa.
What year was this now?
That was 83.
You joined as?
Assistant manager, I think it was.
What was banking in those days?
No,
Vanilla loans and...
Grindlays was a slightly different bank. It was called Grindlays Bank International because it had a merchant banking wing. So, for instance, I joined in the middle of the bank arranging loan to fund Kiambere Dam. The bank had put an investment into Chemelil sugar factory. So at the age of 28, I found myself on the board of Chemelil sugar factory, representing Grindlays Bank. So it had more than, it did a lot of arms financing for Kenya out of the UK, did a lot of ECGD, Export Credit Guarantee Department financing out of the UK. So it wasn't quite as, and there was a part that was an ordinary bank, but there's a lot of merchant banking, which is, by the way, why I'd written to join you and said I'd like to come to Grindlays.
And those days, merchant banking is what we call investment banking today.
Yeah.
And that, John, was the seed of the big success and big successful career that you then ended up having in investment banking. No one can talk about investment banking in Kenya today without mentioning John Ngumi, and you were at the forefront of a number of the largest deals that took place in this town, which have been documented, and anyone who Googles John Ngumi will document and see those deals. But you've lived also through what anyone would call serious financial failures. This is the part that people don't see. You've been auctioned, your house has been mortgaged.
Almost auctioned.
You've been almost auctioned. You've mortgaged your house to
5 times.
While still maintaining a public image of success. So what did that contradiction teach you about ego and shame? You embrace it, and part of the reason why I wanted to have you on the podcast, John, maybe even for context, is that many years ago you found me talking to some young managers at Stanbic. You were at that time the coverage director for Africa, based in Nairobi though, for Standard Bank. And you found me talking to these young people, and it was a Saturday morning. Okay. And you happened to be coming out of your office. You looked through the glass and you saw people in a room, and you saw me and you're like, Carol, what are you doing here? And I said, well, we're coming to talk to them about financial planning. And I've never forgotten what you said. You looked all those young people, there must have been about 20 in that room, and you said, listen to her. I wish I knew when I was your age what I know now. I've been almost auctioned, I've mortgaged my house, I've seen financial failure. And if I had had a bit more knowledge then, I wouldn't have ended up. And you were very open about it. So that's why I really wanted to unpack that in today's podcast, that people know the successful part of John, but they don't know what it has taken to behind that success.
But if you think about it, what you're really saying is that we're a society where people find it difficult to accept that they can fail.
Let's start with your privilege. Think about your privileged background and how you grew up.
But what does that privilege give you? It gives you the confidence to be yourself. I would have thought that is the most important thing. But whatever they say out there doesn't really matter. Yeah, so businesses fail. So businesses fail. Have I stolen your money? No. So why should I not actually say, I tried? If you think of Loiter, which is, to me, a fantastic example of creating something and then seeing it fall, but seeing its fruits absolutely decorate the landscape.
What was Loiter?
Let me explain that. When I was in Barclays in 1992 and 3, old colleagues of mine whom I'd met at the Citibank came to me, and we remained friends. And basically, they had the idea of creating a black-owned investment bank. There was none in Sub-Saharan Africa at that time. So one thing led to the other. I was then in Barclays. I was then heading Barclays Merchant Finance Limited, which was Barclays Investment Bank. And in fact, we named it Loiter because Barclays Plaza was on Loiter Street. So that's why I said, let's call it the Loiter, which is a Maasai name for a hill, I believe. And I'm sure your friend will Google it. And and we formed it. It was a risk. It was a huge risk. But then so was me leaving the city in '89. I'd been offered a job in New York to go and work for in New York. I just didn't feel like going that direction. I felt I needed to try out something else, and I did. Between '89 December and July July '90, when Barclays invited me to join them, I did many things. I was a wine trader. I was a wine merchant. I did sugar. I did this. I did that.
Were you married with children at this time?
Yeah.
And your kids were young?
Yes, by that time they were. This was now '89. My son, no. Yeah, I had 2 sons by then, yeah. My daughter hadn't been born yet. They were still in kindergarten at Kestromana and Green Gates, yeah. But you can't imagine. So, fast forward to 93, 94. If you'd worked in London, the period it was, I came in at the tail end I came in the midst and at the tail end of a group of giant bankers, Sigmund Warburg, Felix Rohatyn, I remember there is a many or two. Now,
these were Europeans working in Kenya.
In London. This was
in London.
When I was working in London.
Yes.
And you ask yourself, why can't we create, Michael von Clem, that's what those guys are thinking about. Why can't we do the same in Africa? And so Loiter was a bold, brave, brilliant, mad attempt to create a proper African investment bank. There was a Kenyan, me, a Palestinian, Yusuf Barzian, a Zambian, Justin Chinyanta, an American, Eric Roy, and a Ghanaian, Kofi Ajapong Boateng. And we had all worked in Mercury, Warburg, in City, HSBC. I mean, it was a really, really, really eclectic bunch of very, very, very aggressive people. And we said, stuff it, we'll create it. We were serious risk takers. Alpha male with a star. So yeah, we took up a whole floor. I went to the late Philip Ndagwa and told him I needed an office. And he said, okay, there's a whole floor at Ambank House. We took half, and the fintech buyer and took the other half.
Ambank House was near
Hazina Towers in
yes,
University Way.
Yes, yeah.
And we started. We put up furniture just like you see in an old line merchant bank in London. We lived the style the champagne, the cognac, the cigars, the high tea, the big
Financed
cars.
by yourselves.
Oh, yeah, financed by ourselves. And we did good. I think we did the first black empowerment deal in South Africa even before South African independence. We hosted and advised Professor Washington Okumu when he was doing the peace agreement between Nelson Mandela and Peter Lezi. We put in a bid to buy Standard Chartered Investment Services. When that failed, we created our own asset management company anyway, the first one ever in Kenya, and got Standard Chartered, Total, and BAT as our first customers. So we had 4 billion shillings under management. Then
the pension funds.
Yeah, the pension funds. We did some swank deals in Kenya. We brought the first ever portfolio investors in Kenya after the relaxation of exchange controls to buy into NIC. We put together a company to buy undervalued companies called Regent Undervalued Assets Africa Fund, which we listed in Dublin, I remember. But that never really took off. It was many years ahead of its time. We saw the rise of China and tried to put together a fund which would basically, whose investment thesis would be buy China cheap by buying Africa. But again, that was a stretch too far for that time. We brought all the tobacco financing we did all the tobacco financing with TDB in Zambia and Malawi and another place.
TDB is
PTA Bank then, now Trade Development Bank.
Okay.
I mean, we did a lot. We did the first ever research papers. If you remember, we used to have our research paper was required reading by the financial markets every Friday. There's a lot we did. Lots and lots and lots. Now, 5 alpha males are 5 too many. I think looking back, what we needed was a managing partner who was not involved in bringing deals, but we didn't. So we were incredibly successful, but we were also incredibly extravagant. Let's just say that my childhood styles had morphed into adulthood.
Turning left on the plane.
Let's just say we lived well. But it did mean that in the end, we were financially unsustainable. But in the end, it broke up. Kofi, the Ghanaian, went off to South Africa, joined a lady called, or rather, one of the ladies we had brought in the operation called Wanjiku Mwegane joined him too. They created First Africa, which they sold to Standard Chartered, and Wanjiku is now back and had a very successful career in Kenya after that. Jane Briggs went off to ABN AMRO. Justin and Yusuf and Eric died in a car crash, but his father had joined us, so they ended up keeping Loiter, buying a bank in Malawi, buying a bank in Zambia, and now they own. They're a big shareholder in Credit, John Kariuki's firm, the old AR Credit and other things. So
how many years did it last?
What?
Loiter.
In its heyday, in 94 until 99 or thereabout.
So about 6 years.
Yeah, but then if you think about it, then virtually the entire capital markets infrastructure in Kenya came from Loiter. So people like Charles Ogallo created Gen Africa out of that. Old Mutual came about because they inherited all the business we had when we went out of the asset management investment business. I can say that the pension fund industry in Kenya basically was fathered at the asset management industry was fathered at Loiter, and it's no surprise that in 98, 99, 98 I think it was, the then Financial Secretary in Treasury, Joseph Kenywa, who then went on to become head of public service, asked me to join a group to look at how to enhance the pension fund industry. And that's how we came up with the RBA. And then
the Retirement Benefits Authority.
Yeah,
how did it end up that you were, borrowing to pay the salary? Is it because you were the only Kenyan?
Yeah, mainly because I felt very strongly I had enticed very many of the Kenyans to come in. In the end, we had 34 employees. And I ended up borrowing to keep them around until they found jobs. And I'm glad to say every single one of them found a job. It left me high and dry. So I became a real hustler. Doing deals here for Toyota, for this, for that. One of my more interesting ones was brokering the sale of laundry house to KCB pension fund. Those sorts of deals. I spent 9 months trying to revive Cabro Works. So I used to drive a pickup. And imagine me driving a pickup around town. And all those sorts of things I did for all that time until Peter Harris and the late John Ngumi and Peter Harris asked me whether I was interested in coming back to banking. That's how I went.
The late John Ngumi was the owner of Ngumi stockbroker.
Yeah.
And Peter Harris was the
CEO at Citibank. And that's how I ended up back at Citibank, where I had to eat serious humble pie. I had left Citibank in 1989 as a Kenyan superstar, what we used to call a resident vice president, but in Kenya we couldn't use that term, so I was an assistant general manager. And I had hired or been involved in hiring people like Amin Habib, the late Amin Habib, the late Frankie Reri, Philip Odera, all that lot. And I came back, and as you know, I came back to report to Amin Habib. Not the easiest psychological transition to make. But there I was deep in debt, and I needed to resume working properly and earning properly and paying down my debt.
Broken, bruised, but not out.
Not sure. I was broken. I was bruised. If I'd been broken, I would have given up. I remember, I think I've told this story once, but I'll tell you again. I was driving down Chiroma Road, taking my children to school. They were then at Kenton College. And after taking the U-turn to get into Riverside Drive, I began laughing because I realized I'm driving this car, it's still on loan, I haven't paid for it. It's 5 months overdue, and I'm sure they'll take it away any day. Car is a quarter fueled. I haven't paid school fees at Kenton College, but no one's going to ask me because I'm a governor. It pays, just like it pays to choose your parents carefully. It pays to choose these sorts of roles. My house had just the previous day appeared at auction, and here I am driving as though nothing matters in the world, which is probably the day I decided I need to get out of this. But yeah, you look at things and say, that's where we are, right. We need to move out of here. The question of giving up just did not occur.
And I remember, John, you telling us when we were at Citibank that your children's education was not negotiable.
No, it wasn't. Not at all.
Yeah,
I never has been.
That you were going to do everything in your power to make sure they went to good schools, no matter what.
And I thank Terry Davidson, because I remember one of my conditions for rejoining the bank was that
Citibank.
There was one thing that the bank could never do. No matter whether I had money in my account or not, that school fees check must be paid. It was Kenton and Turi at that time. Broken? No. Bruised? Yes. Absolutely.
Ego bruised?
Ego? I don't know. It depends. If you're comfortable in yourself, why should your ego be bruised? You're broke, so.
And that's what you found me telling these young people. And there's somebody else who also told me that he worked with you at Stanbic, and he said that the one thing that has always kept him going, even at his toughest times, you don't know who it is, and I'll tell you after the podcast, was that you were very steadfast. No matter how down and out you are, the auctioneers are paying for your blood, you've got donor, you're going to pay. Just keep moving and you'll come out on the other side. And we worked with you, if you remember, when we were doing the Safaricom medium term note, the first one.
That's right.
And when we finished that transaction, John, I remember you were sitting with Alice, because remember we did that transaction with Alice, my colleague, and we finished the transaction and you opened a briefcase. I've never forgotten. Everything was signed and dusted and we was finished celebrating. That's the time when you had said, watch this space, Carol and Alice, you'll see all the emails coming in congratulating ourselves. And you said, success has many fathers and failure is an orphan. That's why I learned it.
Yep.
So you opened this briefcase and it just spilled over. Envelopes spilled over. These were these were debts. And I remember we opened it and you're like, all right, time for me now to pay my debt. And you had been shoving everything into that suitcase. You're like, let me focus on finishing this transaction first, then we can deal with debt later. Like, debt didn't phase you. Remember, we sat there thinking, because Citibank in those days was all about image.
Even now.
Very big about image. You had to drive a certain car, you had to live in a certain place, talk in a certain way, dress in a certain way. And you debunked that and you were like, look, me, I've been broke like a nonsense. I don't care. I'm not here to front, as it were. And that's what I'm talking about, the ego bruising, because for those who will be listening or watching this, there's some lessons, John, that you can impart about just being able to come out of that.
Oh, first lesson is this: the sun will always rise and set, whether or not you moan and groan and cry and do whatever. And number two, if you brought children into the world, or got a wife, or got a family, got and they're looking at you, there's nobody else. This is it. Go and do whatever it takes. It becomes a mindset issue. Will it work? If you, I don't want to behave in pop psychology here, but actually, many a time I have gone to sleep wondering what tomorrow will bring, and tomorrow there is a solution that has begun to form in my mind. But quite frankly, I think there are times I think we may have been colonized by the wrong people, because there is a shame in failure in this country which shocks me. The US is far different. Failure once, twice, 3 times, 4 times is not an issue. But over here, we seem to penalize failure and carry it as a burden all one's life. Why? It is something that we will need to work on at some stage, because that's why we then spend months, years trying to find the perfect solution when it just goes. When we created the Loiter, there was no blueprint. I remember when we did the first EADB bond, East African Development Bank bond in 1997, it was 820 million. There were no rules. So we spoke to Richard Harney, who had just come to Kenya, and he'd been in Clifford Chance in London. We asked him to suggest some rules, some regulations, and he brought them. Those regulations are still working for the CMA in the bond market. You try and fail fast. We don't do that. We are obsessed. I don't know whether it comes from school or whatever, but we are obsessed with.
Is it a colonial history?
It's a very British attitude. This shame of failing. You failing society, failing whatever. But it is something that I have noticed again and again. We would rather not start than fail. Than start and fail. And that, I've been hoping that now that many of our young students go off to Canada, Australia, US, non-traditional places, I'm hoping that will then gradually work its way into I think it's last year or the year before, I followed with amazement these many disapproving stories about trigger foods. And I'm wondering, wait a minute. These guys actually dared to put this together. And all people can talk about is that it's failed. This attitude I don't understand.
Almost with some schadenfreude.
I've been down that road many times, where people are laughing at you because what you tried is not working. But it's just wrong. It's just that penalizing of the failure is, to me, amazing. If the guys are willing to stand up, to get up again and go, get up and go.
Is it a history of not celebrating entrepreneurship? Because where the failure is seen largely is in the entrepreneur. Is it because we always celebrated go to school, work in a bank, or work in corporate, or work in the government? Entrepreneurship was not celebrated in the past.
I'll be even more out of left field. If you look at our Indian fellow citizens, and if you read their history, if you look at the industries they have started and failed, but gone on to experiment with something else, and something else, and something else, then you look at us, and you think that many people were educated at schools which glorified perfection. Many people have backgrounds which glorify perfection. There are very few stories of struggle and failure. I read, or I used to read now, they bore me to tears, but most bios of most key people in Kenya have the same storyline. I was born in rural Kenya. I milked cows before 5 a.m. I ran 10Ks to school. We grew, I don't know what it is. We ran back to do whatever it is people did in rural Kenya. I was very bright. So I went to this school, I went to that school, I went to university, and today I'm a multi-billionaire. It's just all, this is nonsense. People go through some real struggles.
Yeah.
You asked me, no, I think it was her. She asked me when we spoke last Thursday, you wanted to know what sort of things influenced me, and you wanted me to bring the pictures. I don't do such things. But I brought for you to see a 3-volume I inherited this book from this volume from the person from whom my father purchased his house in Karen in 1969. I think it was involuntary giving on his part, because I think he was more or less ordered to get out and leave everything. But if you look at the date on this book, and I finished it in that, I finished the 3 volumes.
Oh my God, it's so heavy. Oh my God.
I finished the volumes in the same year, 1970. I was 14 at the time.
This is The Great War.
Yeah.
By Winston Churchill.
Yeah. So
volume 3. So it's 3 volumes.
There are 2 others, yeah. Now, that gave me a great interest in learning. This is in 1970. This is out in Karen.
When people are reading James Hadley Chase and...
Yeah.
Wow.
Now, it gave me an interest in studying about him. And he was a monument to failure following failure with success in between.
Winston Churchill.
Yeah. School career, military career, political career, and see where he ended up. How can anybody possibly give up when you see somebody like this or others? In fact, when you see the people who founded this republic, people like Tom Mboya didn't go beyond Form 2, I think. Neither did Jomo Kenyatta, although he did his his book when he was at the LSE. Neither did most of them. It's only people like Eliud Matthew, who went to Balliol in Oxford, or Bio Kenange, who went to, I think, was it Stanford or the other one? Then people like, or Cornell or something, people like Njoroge Mungai. But people like Jaramogi Oginga didn't go to college. And they went through some hardships. They went through some hard times. I think we just need to get out of this, what I call British shame, British type shame at trying and failing.
There's a story that you like about fleeting glory that you like to. Would you like to tell us that? The Roman general story. Mm-hmm.
I'll paraphrase it. When Rome was being built and maintained, Rome went out and conquered territories. Victorious generals were given a parade down the main streets, which led to the Senate, and they were made lifelong senators. As they came down, they were surrounded by their captives, their slaves, the animals they had got, the valuable gold and other things they had brought, their soldiers, their families. But riding on the chariot, or the general's chariot, was a slave. Now, we tend to think of slaves with an U.S. southern states mentality. Yeah. Slaves laboring over cotton fields. But actually, slaves, for a long time, they were the teachers, they were the philosophers, they were the advisors as well. So this slave, basically an advisor, would fan the general's face and periodically would remind the general that the same crowds cheering him on as he went to the Senate are the same people who cheer on when he was being taken to be hanged. Same people.
Was this a brave slave, or was that his job?
That was his job, to remind the general of reality, that all glory is fleeting. Mm. You may be absolutely top of the world today, and tomorrow the world has no time for you.
It's one of your favorite stories, John.
Yeah,
why?
Because I've seen my father and his friends get to dizzying heights and then come down. I've lived that experience as well. And I just wish that there was more wisdom which would tell people who find themselves in high positions that if it could all go away. All glory is fleeting.
What would you do different, knowing that, having seen that, your father going through it, you going through that cycle? What would you tell your 30-year-old self?
Just one thing. I would probably be less of a risk taker. I always risked everything. If there's one lesson I would do is that if today I was to begin Loiter again, I would have done it after I'd paid off my house loan and given and put aside 2-3 years expenses so that I could actually really go and do these things.
John, entrepreneurs don't have that luxury to pay off their entire house loan, have 2 or 3 years worth of savings. Entrepreneurs, by their very nature, are risk takers. That's not what you tell your 30-year-old. Then your 30-year-old self would never have started a business.
I couldn't think of anything else to tell my 30-year-old. That's what I would do. No, but there is one real regret I have. Mm. I think what I should have done with Loita, I should have persevered, because it was only a few years later, especially 1999 to 2002 to 2003, is only 3 years. Within that period, in fact 2 years even, the investment banking world exploded. I would have been prime position. But it happened. It's bygones. It's lessons I'll put if I ever get bothered to pen my memoirs. I'll do that. I can't stand this. Since I didn't wake up at 5 o'clock to milk cows, I doubt whether my history would interest anybody. I remember there was once I remember reading a story. I was at home in Karen, and that story has always stuck by me about this poor girl who's in school, this rich girl who's in school, or relatively average or poor people, sounds like me actually. And they're told to do a story about a poor family. And the girl submits her story. And it starts as such stories start. Once upon a time, there was a poor family. The father was poor, the mother was poor, children were poor, the maid was poor, the butler was poor, the chauffeur was poor, the security, because that's all she knew, that all homes have a pool attendant, have a butler, but they're all poor. So you ask me to do a story. Yeah, there are times I feel like that. So I'm not sure I could compete with those books of extreme hardship and how we slept on goat skins and I don't know what they all did.
But one of the things that you've been very tenacious about, John, and you've embraced it, is your stammer. Mm-hmm. It's been a lifelong stammer, and anyone who's been watching and listening cannot help but hear it. But yet you're a very powerful communicator. And you said that one of the ways that you made up for it was in speed reading.
Yeah. I don't know where the stammer came from. I know my father had it, but not as badly as mine, and a couple of cousins also had it. I always attributed to its gravity to when we were very young, and there were two taboos among my parents and their friends. And this time I'm talking about living in Kaleni, where parents took communal responsibility for children. So you had these women from Luo and Nyanza who smoked cigarettes the wrong way around. So the lit end is inside, and they had a strong hand, and they would punish you without a thought because your mother is out at work. They took responsibility. It was almost a village. Anyway, there was a taboo being left-handed, and I think that applies to a lot of African communities. And I was left-handed when I was growing up. And I remember the punishment they used to give was to chop into very tiny pieces onions, tomatoes, and a green pepper. Put it here, I still have vivid memories of it, and force you to eat it. And that was their way of forcing you to stop being left-handed. By the way, up to today, I don't eat onions or tomatoes at all, or green pepper for that matter. And I remember it accelerated after that. This time accelerated. So it's always been
because that was trauma. I mean,
I'm
this
sure
essentially you were put through trauma.
We didn't have such words, I guess.
Of course.
Get on with life.
Jikazi.
And yeah, it's been there. I think the story I was telling you that day with her was that we used to have this habit in school of asking somebody to stand up and read a paragraph or a page in English literature or in Swahili. And when you stammer, you have a very good sense what words will cause you problems today. A sibilant, a consonant, even a vowel, and you train yourself to find substitute words. So I would skim in the 15, 20 seconds it took to stand up and read, you skim the page, and today, bees are a problem. And by the time you reached the B, you had already found another word. But you needed to speed read. And even today, even doing this podcast is a terror. Anything to do with public speaking, the fact that you cannot do something a 5-year-old child can do is tough.
And yet, nobody can tell from the outside. Just like the way you're navigating the rooms of Oxford.
But that's because I'm looking forwards. You're forced continuously to find words which you can use easily. Of course, what it does mean, and it's very, very, very useful, is that people are forced to pay attention to you, and you can see the audience being ready for you to fail.
Or they're just enthralled, John.
And that's a challenge in itself, that they are waiting for you to, especially if they think you're arrogant or snobbish or whatever, let him fall. Yeah, it's that.
One of the things you taught me when you were my boss is not only speed reading, but being able to read upside down. And I remember we walked into a certain managing director's office and we left. And as we were walking to the car, I remember you saying, X and Y Bank have also submitted their proposals. And this is what they have put in. I'm like, how the hell do you know?
And
those proposals were on the table of the CEO and you actually read them upside down.
And I was told this by my boss in London. I worked for NatWest's merchant bank called County Bank, and he taught me why we never held meetings in offices. We always used a meeting room for that reason. People will read, they'll find out. And nowadays, of course, with their cameras, they'll take photos and do whatever it is, no matter what you try.
John, my final question before we go to the last segment. What's the season of life you're in right now?
I'm not sure. I'm not sure because it should be logical. I should now be putting my feet up and becoming a sage.
You're doing the Jomo Kenyatta comeback, brushback. Do you call that a brush? What do you call it? The comeback? Straight up the Jomo Kenyatta playbook.
I should be a sage, but the last going into public service completely derailed my, or rather being forced into public service completely derailed my thought out trajectory. Although I'll be honest, I've never really had a career plan, but things have worked out. So essentially, I'm back to trying to figure out what do I do. I'm no longer a banker. I stopped being a banker in 2015, and I don't pretend to be one. There's a whole new crop of people running banking, who are far cleverer than I am. I'm not a true entrepreneur, as in building up companies. So I'm still trying. I think the next 10 years will be very interesting.
You still haven't answered. What season is it?
Because I don't know. I think at best I would call it a reset without a clear, very finely sculpted the picture of what it will be.
But you do enjoy your grandchildren.
Yeah.
You've now become a grandfather.
Yep.
Stepped out of the corporate limelight.
Totally. Not, in fact, doing this podcast is, to be honest, a favor to you. Otherwise, Mimi and publicity, I don't want. I've had more than enough of me. I'm sure in preparing for this session, you Googled, or your colleague Googled me and found the good, the bad, and the really ugly.
Yep. Well.
So you said that was the final question before your last session. What do you want to ask?
So as we close out the year, we want you to finish this sentence. In 2026, I refuse to
despair.
And in 2026, I insist on
being me.
Excellent. We're now going to go into the final section. It's called Nitpicks on the Quick. And what I want you to do is give me the answer that comes straight first to your mind. Just
About
a few
what?
questions.
Anything. Okay.
No, I'm going to give, let me give you
I've
the
never watched
questions.
your podcast. I've not watched any podcast, so
Then let's roll with this one. Early riser or sleep in on weekends?
early riser.
Yeah, I know you send messages like at 4:30 in the morning, so we know how that works. Having read the Financial Times, that's one of the interesting thing about you. Text or phone call?
Text.
Cooking a meal or ordering takeout?
Order and check out.
What do you like to order?
Depends on my mood. But cooking and I are, that's a gene that was left out when I was made.
Mountains or the beach?
Mountains.
Travel back in time or fast forward your life?
Travel back.
Where would you go?
Probably back to college.
Oxford?
Absolutely.
Okay. Where you'd be walking down again? No, climbing down, coming down. Favorite Kenyan dish?
Actually, I don't know. I don't really have one.
Ugali?
I'm pretty.
Nyama choma?
Hate that stuff. I'm really eclectic. It depends on the mood. I don't really know. I think if I were to be asked the best, it's a very strange. This mashed peas and
Mokimo?
potatoes and the sweet potatoes and water. That I would take.
So a kind of mokimo.
Yes, I kind of. But I really I'm not real. I'm
No
not a foodie.
Okay. One thing you always carry with you, John?
One thing. Can't think of anything.
That you always carry with you?
Always. And no, it's
Most
not a
people
phone.
usually say phone.
No. I tend to leave it. I've left it now, and I leave it in the car for meetings. Do I always carry something with me? Curiosity.
I love that. What's your go-to stress reliever?
Interestingly, it could be worse. Really, that's what I think. I think through things and say it could be worse.
So what do you do to just de-stress?
I read. I stop. If you're asking, do I do golf? I'm not a joiner of things. Yes, I may be at Loiter Country Club, but that's a real anomaly.
I'm so glad you checked yourself before I checked you. So thank you very much for that.
That's a real anomaly. I'm not really a joiner.
Most inspiring place you visited?
I'm trying to think of all the countries I've been to. Which one really
And it can even be in Kenya.
made me feel we could. This is us. I'll tell you what. Hong Kong. A fishing village turned into a global center. Yes, Hong Kong. I haven't been to Singapore yet, but Hong Kong.
And the last one, read the book or watch the movie?
Read the book.
We knew you were going to say that. So
Why?
we had actually prepared because we knew you were going to say that. So what's a book that's had the biggest impact on your life? Although I think you've already kind of given
I've
us a hint.
already told you that, yep.
And what would you recommend to everybody else?
To read.
Yeah. You know, you once gave me a book on Jomo. It's still this thick.
Not on Jomo Kenyatta, it's a book on Kenya.
That one, it was that thick.
It's an unusual book because most books on Kenya talk about the Mau Mau period and other pre-colonial times, when that book actually starts where they end. What would I recommend to people? Couple of books. One, other than this, which is, I don't think most Kenyans would be interested in.
The Great War by
knowing
Winston
about.
Churchill in Volume 1, Volume 2, and Volume 3. I don't think anyone here is going to be running to the bookstop to buy it.
There's a book I read in 1974 or 74, I think it was. And the reason I recommend it to people is because it speaks to the folly, the hubris, the folly of hubris. It's called The Best and the Brightest. It is an account of how the US found itself mired in the Vietnam War, despite the fact that, especially between 60 and 66, 61 and 66, it had the brightest minds in the US. People who had been in the Second World War, had seen of Hitler and Tojo of Japan, had steered America through the subsequent years, were on top of their game. And yet they mistook brilliance for wisdom. They had no self-doubt, and they came a cropper very, very badly. Best and Brightest by an author who died the other day called David Halberstam. That's what I would recommend.
Great. John, you've been excellent to have, and we thank you for your candor, for your insights.
Hope you've just not said that because that's what you tell everybody.
No, John, this one is especially for you. After all, you said you don't watch the podcast, so I'll know that for sure. There's no way you have to verify it.
I haven't even watched, what's her names?
Jerry's. Yeah, you did well there. And I'll tell you what is especially for you. You've been a great guest. It's been a pleasure having you.
And I hope your team have learned a bit about ancient Kenya.
A thing or two about a thing or two is what they've picked. Thank you, John.
Asante sana.
Chinua Achebe, in his book, A Man of the People, wrote, "For what is modesty but inverted pride? We all think we're first-class people. Modesty forbids us from saying so ourselves, though presumably not from wanting to hear it from others." John Ngumi has never hidden behind modesty, and that's precisely what makes him interesting. There's a steadiness to him, the willingness to admit when life has bruised him, the clarity to say, if you're broke, you're broke, the nerve to try again anyway. John doesn't romanticize resilience, he just lives it. Today's conversation was about the man who keeps choosing to stand back up, who is not embarrassed by his own humanity, who knows that ego is a poor shield for a life that demands constant reinvention. In a year that has tested many of us, John leaves us with a quietly provocative dare. Try, fail, and try again, without flinching at what anyone thinks. Thanks for watching the Nitpicker podcast, where we share interesting stories about interesting people doing interesting things. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe.